Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and our distinguished guests, Mrs. Jodie McKay, Dr. Hugh McDermott, and the Honourable Dr. Jeffrey Lee. My name is Banu Purvameshian, and it gives me great pleasure in welcoming you all to Thamilvar Mandram's event, Mukperum Vizha 2021, the Triple Celebration. Firstly, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I kindly ask everyone to please rise for the Tamil Live Active. Thank you. We will now initiate our event with a Bharatanatyam dance performance by Miss Visakha Iyer. The first piece presents two gems from the Tirukkural. One verse talks of how knowledge is the most valuable in life and how any amount of monetary wealth cannot match up to it. The second verse narrates how the gift of helping is far superior to any other kind of gift. The second dance presents the majestic Lord Nadaraja in his Ananda Tandavam, the dance of joy.
தமிழே உயிரே வணக்கம் தமிழே உயிரே வணக்கம் உடைமை உடைமை ஒரு உடைமை இல்லாது நீங்கிவிடும் உள்ளம் உடைமை உடைமை ஒரு உடைமை இல்லாது நீங்கிவிடும் உள்ளம் உடைமை உடைமை ஒரு உடைமை இல்லாது நீங்கிவிடும் உள்ளம் உடைமை உடைமை ஒரு உடைமை இல்லாது நீங்கிவிடும் வலியார்க்கு ஒன்று ஈவதே ஈகை வலியார்க்கு ஒன்று ஈவதே ஈகை மற்றெல்லாம் குறியெடுப்பை நீரது உடைத்து வலியார்க்கு ஒன்று ஈவதே எதிர்ப்பை குரலே திருக்குறளே குரலே உலக பொதுமறையே குரலே திருக்குறளே குரலே உலக பொதுமறையே குரலே சமயங்களில் மனிதர்களுக்கு அறத்தை கற்றுத்தரும் திருக்குறளை பயில்வோம் வாழ்வில் பின்பற்றுவோம்.
ஆனந்த நடமிடும் பாரன் ஆனந்த நடமிடும் பாரன் ஆனந்த நடமிடும் பாரன் ஆனந்த நடமிடும் ஆனந்த நடமிடும் ஆனந்த நடமிடும் பொன்னம் பரவான சிதம்பரநாதன் பொன்னம் பரவான தலை தொடர்ந்து காணும் தரும் பெருங்கானம் தலை தொடர்ந்து யாரும் தரும் பெருங்கானம் தலை தொடர்ந்து காணும் தரும் பெருங்கானம்
Thank you so much, Visaga Iyer, for that lovely performance. Before you go, would we please be able to get Dirunanda Kumar Avarhal to present Visaga Iyer with a certificate? Thank you again. Now, we'll move on to today's speeches. Tamil Valarchi Mandram's Mupperum Vizha 2021, the Triple Celebration, revolves around three important days: Thiruvalluvar Dinam, Thiruvalluvar Day; Thaimozhi Dinam, Mother Language Day; and Thamilar Dinam, Thamilar Day. Thamilar Dinam is celebrated during January, a month for Tamils all around the globe, consisting of celebrations such as Tamil Harvest Festival, Thai Pongal, Jallikattu, and Thiruvalluvar Day. Thaimozhi Dinam, International Mother Language Day, has been observed every year since February 2000 to promote linguistic and cultural diversity and multilingualism. One's language holds the root to their identity, primary communication, education, social integration, and the development of society. However, globalization has resulted in the demise of many languages, ultimately taking a toll on the world's cultural diversity. In spite of this, in 2004, Tamil was declared a classical language, meaning that it had met three criteria. Its origins are ancient, it has an independent tradition, and it possesses a considerable body of ancient literature. Thiruvalluvar Dinam is celebrated on the 15th of January by the government of Tamil Nadu in commemoration of the Tamil poet and philosopher Thiruvalluvar and his contribution to society, the Tirukkural, which is one of the finest literatures to exist. In 1,330 couplets, it teaches us about Aram, the virtue, Porul, wealth, and Inbam, love. G.U. Pope called Valluvar the greatest poet of South India. However, some suggest that Valluvar's aim was not to produce a work of art, but an instructive text which focuses on wisdom, justice, and the ethics of life. The text, which considered as one of the finest works of Tamil literature, has been translated into at least 40 different languages, whether it be Indian or non-Indian languages, making it one of the most translated ancient works. Now, I could keep going on about this triple celebration for a long time. However, I think I'll leave the rest to the speakers. So without further ado, we'll move on to our speeches for this afternoon, commencing with the speeches in English, which will be followed by the speeches in Tamil. Our first speaker for today is Miss Apurva Raj, who will be highlighting the importance of Thamilar Day. Apurva Raj is a lawyer at Herbert Smith Freehills. Despite growing up outside of Tamil Nadu, Apurva has maintained her connection to her culture and language throughout Tamil art forms. Please everyone welcome Apurva Raj.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். I want to start off by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders both past and present. I acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples' continued fight for justice, recognition, and respect in Australia, and I stand as an ally in support of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in that fight. I acknowledge that the very building at which we gather today the Parliament of New South Wales, stands as a symbol of the historical and continued oppression of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It was in these hallowed halls of Parliament where Indigenous people's citizenship was denied in their own country, and where policies that constituted the stolen generations were birthed. I won't deny there is significance to this event being held at Parliament House. In a way, it is a formal acknowledgement of the value and importance of my Tamil identity and culture. But I cannot, in good conscience, stand here advocating for my culture and my identity if I don't, in the same breath, advocate for the rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We live on stolen land, we work on stolen land, and we stand here today speaking about our culture on stolen land. As a representative of young Tamil people in Australia, I say this unequivocally. We support the Uluru Statement from the heart. We support an Indigenous voice in Parliament. We support constitutional recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and we support treaty. That is my acknowledgement of country. One of the three events being celebrated today is Thamilar Dinam, which I am speaking on. And we cannot talk about Thamilar Dinam without talking about what it means to be Tamil. As you all know, Tamil is a classical language with a large and ancient body of literature, but Tamil is also an ethno-linguistic group, meaning an ethnic group connected by our shared language and culture. Tamil people are spread across the globe, and interestingly, our ethnic identity is separate to our national identity. Tamil people are historically nationals of India and Elam, then Malaysia, Singapore, South Africa, and Fiji, and now the diaspora has grown more global due to the mass migration caused by the civil war in Sri Lanka and globalization. Tamil people can be found in all parts of Europe, in Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. This diversity of nationalities within our ethno-linguistic group only adds to the richness and complexity of our existence and culture, manifesting in our different dialects and culinary practices. But our ancestors, our thousands of years of civilization, our literature, our shared values, and our art forms fundamentally bring us together as Tamil people, no matter where we are in the world. And a true example of this diversified unity is Thamilar Dinam, celebrated on multiple days in January, but particularly on the first day of the month of Thai, by Tamil people of every religion and nationality, including here in Australia. In recognition of our culture and contributions to the societies that we live in, Canada in 2016 officially recognized January of every year as Tamil Heritage Month. And there is a similar motion in the UK Parliament as well. But any recognition or celebration of Tamil people and culture cannot be removed from another fundamental thing that connects us all, our political struggle. As stateless ethnic groups, struggling for political recognition and our human rights is not a new phenomenon. We are at our core a politicized group because since colonialism, when the British, with a few reckless strokes on a map and centuries of oppression and occupation, destroyed our established nations and forced us into forming new countries, something Indigenous people know only too well about, our ethnic identity has made us a minority in our own ancestral lands. And we continue to face the struggles of being a minority in any and every society that we reside in. Our people have faced systemic racism and discrimination perpetrated by the majority groups in India and Malaysia and Singapore, and have faced literal genocide in Sri Lanka. So a celebration of Thamilar Dinam is at its core a recognition and endorsement of our continued political struggle. And when I think about what a Thamilar Dinam might look like in Australia, I will be honest with you. Australia's systemic racism is what comes to mind. How can I expect a country that does not respect its Indigenous peoples to recognize the struggles of my people in any meaningful way? How can I expect a country that willfully locked up refugees and curated a public discourse that villainized and dehumanized people that were literally seeking refuge here from death and persecution? A country that in a dawn raid tore a beloved Tamil family from their hometown in central Queensland and condemned them to a life of exile on Christmas Island, despite the entire town of Thiruvalluvar campaigning for the family to be returned home. An entire town's effort for humanity and dignity for my people have fallen on deaf ears. So how can I expect us to be recognized and celebrated in any meaningful way in this country? Priya, Nades, little Gopika, and Tarunika are my family. They are my blood. They are my people. Actions speak louder than words. The way they have been dehumanized and denied dignity and compassion is the reality of all Tamil people in this country. Can there be a meaningful celebration of Thamilar Dinam without confronting the ways in this country that this country continues to oppress and harm my people? I grew up in Australia being spoon-fed this idea that Australia is a multicultural society. It is a favorite slogan of our current Prime Minister. I have heard Prime Minister Scott Morrison say every chance he gets, Australia is the most successful multicultural nation in the world. This was the same person that coined the phrase, turn back the boats, and championed the policy of Operation Sovereign Borders, a policy that sanctioned the Australian government to forcibly turn back hundreds of boats filled with refugees in the open sea, many of whom were my people. In the name of protecting Australia's borders, as if persecuted refugees facing death and discrimination posed the greatest threat to Australia. I don't understand how most successful multicultural society and turn back the boats are compatible statements that can exist in one political discourse. This stark contrast is but one example of the toxic hypocrisy that is normalized in Australia when discussing race and ethnic issues, not just against my people, but against every minority group, and especially against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I'm talking about the hypocrisy of a government that funds the protection of stolen historical Aboriginal artifacts in museums, but then refuses to protect the sacred places of Aboriginal people in the present, like Uluru from public defacement, or ancient Aboriginal rock shelters in the Western Pilbara that were literally blown up by mining company Rio Tinto. So to the politicians in this room and everywhere in Australia, I put this to you. I have spent my whole life going to events and festivals such as these, where we celebrate our important cultural occasions. And in every such event, I have seen politicians from every major party come to talk about how rich my culture is, how valued my people are in Australian society. And I watched as my parents and grandparents were overjoyed at these statements of finally having their culture and their identities validated by the majority, by those in authority, something that they very rarely saw in other parts of the world. But it never sat quite right with me. And do you know why? Because my generation are not immigrants in this country. We were born here. We grew up here. We are as much Australian as we are Tamil, and we already know the value of our culture, our language, our identity, and our traditions. I know my worth, and I don't need my place in this society validated for me by others. I am tired of my culture being reduced to my vibrant clothes, my colorful festivals, and my yummy food. I am more than the food I eat, more than the clothes I wear, and more than the festivals I celebrate. My culture and my identity is first and foremost my political struggle. As my political representatives, what I want to hear from Australian politicians is what you are doing for my cause and for my people. Here's a quick list of issues that are important to us that we want you to champion for us. I want to know how you are using your political exposure to advocate for the return of Priya, Nades, and the girls back home to Billow, and at a federal level, what your party's plans are to dismantle such inhumane practices towards asylum seekers. I want to know that you recognize the continued persecution of Elam Tamils in Sri Lanka. Our literature, our philosophy of life, and our festivals, including Pongal, are centered around coexistence and the protection of the environment. I want to know what your environmental policies are and how you plan to fight climate change. Our people have suffered genocide, linguicide, dispossession from our lands. We share that in common with our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters. So I want to know how you are advocating for the justice and recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people through your policies. I know of many young refugees in Australia on SHEV and TPV visas for years who have been barred from pursuing tertiary education because they're not eligible for financial assistance from the government. Can you imagine the cruelty of being able to see but never pursue the attendance of university or higher education in life? There is essentially a ceiling made out of TPVs and SHEVs that young Tamil people cannot overcome. And I want to know what you, as my political representative, will do about that. We have a long way to go in Australia to fulfill the promise of a true multicultural society. But I hope that the truths that I've spoken today help us to look within ourselves, confront our shortcomings, and move forward for a better future. It's 2021. We can and must do better. If Thamira Dinam is going to be a celebration of who we are, then you cannot remove that from our political struggle. Only then can we have a true Thamira Dinam in Australia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abuva, for that moving speech. Can I please have Anbujaya to present Abuva with her certificate? Thank you very much. Next up, we're going to be asking Miss Madhumi Korneshwaran to come up to stage. She will be speaking on the topic of Mother Language Day. Madhumi has completed her Bachelor's of Science, majoring in microbiology, and is currently doing her Master's in Forensic Science. She is a Tamil enthusiast, a teacher at Homebush Tamil Study Centre, a public speaker, and a dancer, just to name a few. She is also an active member of Sydney Kamban Karagam. Madhumi.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Honorable Hugh McDermott. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land and by paying my respect to elders past and present. Today, I'm here to speak about Mother Language Day. Languages are most powerful instruments of preserving and developing our tangible and intangible heritage. United Nations states that all moves to promote the dissemination of mother tongue will serve not only to encourage linguistic diversity and multilingual education, but also to develop fuller awareness of linguistic and cultural traditions throughout the world and to inspire solidarity based on understanding, tolerance, and dialogue. The theme of 2021 International Mother Language Day is fostering multilingualism for inclusion in education and society. This is significant for Australians as we live in a multicultural country where we not only respect each other's identity and culture, but also are fortunate enough to have most languages available at public schools as a part of their subjects. Celebrating International Mother Language Day is important because it ensures the languages are not forgotten, as well as keeping the cultural heritages, history of countries intact. People should be proud of their mother language. As a Tamil Australian, it is a privilege and a proud moment for me to speak a few words about my mother tongue, Tamil. Tamil is one of the few living classical languages and has an unbroken literary tradition over 2 millennia. In 2004, Tamil was declared a classical language, meaning that it meets three criteria: it origins one ancient, it has an independent tradition, it possesses a considerable body of ancient literature. Tolkappiyam is the earliest extant Tamil grammar and literary work. The earliest known phase of Tamil literature is termed Sangam literature because the anthologies of odies, lyrics, and idylls which form the major part of the literature. The Sangam anthologies are in two parts: the Aham, dealing with love, and Puram, dealing with war. Thiruvalluvar's Tirukkural, Naladiyar, Aimperum Kapiyangal, the greatest five epics such as Silapadiharam, Manimehalai, Kundalakesi, Valayapadi, and Sivaka Sindhamani, the great work of Kamban, Kamba Ramayana, are just to name a few. These literatures not only convey poetic value, grammar, and vocabulary, but also provide moral values, history, and most importantly, lifestyle. As you would have known, that one of the things we speak about is the Pongal festival, the harvest festival, which speaks about nature. And if you see, in most of the Tamil literary work form, they have spoken about nature in many different ways. And hence why it is important to learn those literature and also to accommodate those in our lifestyle so that we could work towards the climate change, prevent bushfires and other natural disasters. It is critical to learn Tamil, our mother tongue, as it is intertwined with our past. It's not only learning Tamil and understanding our past, but also for us to live in this present and to realize our future, it is important. And also, to anyone who is here, present here today, and also watching this online, I would like to make a request that you teach your children to speak in their mother tongue. And as Tamilians, it's really important for us to teach our children to speak in Tamil and also to learn Tamil. The reason behind this is a language is alive only when it is spoken. And if we are ashamed of our identity, then we cannot pass it to our next generation. And I want to conclude this by giving a small request to the politicians and the senior Tamil activists present here. That comes from my personal as well as from also my friends or my generation people in this Australia. That is to bring Tamil to university level. I have to give you two reasons for this. Number one being, as a Tamil teacher in Australia, I find it really difficult to upgrade or to learn more if I want to learn more. So if you take other subjects such as science or mathematics, there is degrees available in university along with the teaching degree. So you could study those subjects. But with Tamil, we don't have that opportunity. And I'm finishing my bachelor degree. There were electives for other languages, but for Tamil. So I was really upset and I had to do one of the subjects called Greek mythology, and where I was reading all the Greek related literature, but I couldn't do anything to do with Tamil. And also, we don't even have an opportunity that combines with Sri Lankan or Indian universities to do Tamil. So I would like to give this request to the senior Tamil activists and also politicians here to have Tamil as an elective language or just to have a Tamil degree combined with other universities just for the Tamil youngsters so that we could learn in future and also we can get this to the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madame, for that speech. Next up, our next speaker for this afternoon is Miss Kavita Puranishan, who will be speaking on the topic of Thiruvalluvar Day. Kavita is currently completing her honours in psychology at the University of New South Wales. For the past 2 years, she has been co-hosting a radio program on Thamilar Tamil Broadcasting Corporation with the aim to raise awareness about societal issues faced by Tamils living in Australia. In 2015, she has co-founded the band Recover, and since then has been providing a platform for talented young Sydney-based musicians. And through their concerts, they have raised funds for various charity organisations located in both Australia and Sri Lanka. Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished guests. The perfect life, the perfect society, the perfect world. These are all things that we desire to experience, that we strive to achieve. However, these are also the things that seem out of our grasp, things that are close to impossible. But what if I told you that this wasn't the case? What if there was some sort of guide that could help us navigate the highs and lows of life, enabling us to make healthy choices and become better people? Well, these what-if scenarios can in fact become a reality with just one piece of literature, the Thirukural. This text was written by Thiruvalluvar, a Tamil poet and philosopher who hailed from India. Till this day, there is much conflict about his identity. Due to a lack of concrete records in his time, there's much confusion about what his actual name was and the specific time period that he lived in. The Padinakku Kanakku, also known as the 18 Lesser Texts, are a collection of 18 poetic works that arose during the post-Sangam period between the 3rd and the 6th century. As the Thirukural is contained in it, many scholars such as Natchinathinir believe that Thiruvalluvar lived during this post-Sangam period. Now, unlike the confusion that surrounded his identity, there's absolutely no confusion in saying that Thiruvalluvar created one of the world's most influential texts. Thirukural directly translates to mean sacred verses, and the text serves justice to the same. In 1,330 couplets, each consisting of only 7 words, the Thirukural teaches us about life in a way that no other text has been able to. It's divided into 3 parts, with each focusing on a fundamental aspect of our life: virtue, wealth, and love. Having said this, educating individuals about such philosophical topics is extremely difficult. When we're born into this world, we arrive completely blind to the challenges that life has ahead of us. As we grow, we watch how our parents and elders navigate this world. We observe the troubles that they face and how they tackle them. We take in their advice to help us know right from wrong. However, everyone's experiences differ. Life isn't just simply black and white. Sometimes what we consider to be right may be considered wrong by others, and sometimes the advice that's given to us just isn't practical and appropriate in certain situations. And so we find ourselves left with more questions than answers. But the Thirukural is an advanced piece of literature that takes a neutral stance on life. Thiruvalluvar identifies and warns us about a range of potential problems in life and provides us with the solutions on how to combat them. He brings to light many issues that we fail to consider, but understands that merely raising awareness about them isn't good enough. Thus, he goes on to outline the adverse consequences that may follow some of the poor choices that we make, in a way that would make a lasting impact and evoke change within us. On the other hand, he also instructs us on how we can improve ourselves, what qualities we should learn to possess, and how we can appreciate things in life. Gratitude, equity, self-control, modesty, kindness towards relatives, perseverance in spite of difficulties, the correction of faults, upright government, learning, agriculture, acting with forethought, abstaining from drink, moderate eating, raising the family, against envy, anger, fraud, gambling, inflicting suffering, destroying life, acting with cruelty. These are all some of the topics that are explored in the Thirukkural. But what I personally find to be the most invaluable, practical, and much needed lesson of all is that given on friendship. I'm sure everyone in this room understands the importance of friendship and the role that friends play in our lives. And because of this, our parents often caution us to make friends with the right people. But they never really tell us how to know if someone is the right person. And for this reason, Thiruvalluvar dedicates 5 whole chapters to friendship. While the chapters of friendship, choice of friends, and intimacy may teach us things that we may already be aware of, the chapters of evil and false friendship remain an eye-opener as they warn us about things that people do not usually tell us. Thiruvalluvar states that we should avoid befriending those who calculate the profits of friendship, who leave when there isn't any gain, who fail to protect us when they can, and who smile sweetly with their face but never love with their heart. Thus, he becomes a savior for many naive young girls, boys, women, and men by stopping us from damaging ourselves by placing our trust in the wrong hands. And so, from this we can see that Thiruvalluvar examines many aspects of life from unique and different viewpoints to ensure that we're prepared to face whatever trouble that comes our way. Furthermore, the chapters in the Thirukkural align well with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, suggesting that the text not only aids us in attaining our basic physiological and safety needs, the need for love, belonging, and esteem, it can also guide us onto the path to self-actualization. Thus, the Thirukkural is synonymous with several other names such as Uttara Vedam, the ultimate Vedam or scripture of knowledge, and Devanul, the divine book. But what is the true glory of Thirukkural, such that it's praised and recognized by scholars, politicians, and philosophers all over the world throughout different periods of time? The Thirukkural is so highly regarded due to its universality and its survival. This book of life transcends time, with its teachings being appropriate through different ages. Despite being written almost 2,000 years ago, the Thirukkural addresses major issues of the 21st century. And considering the current path that the world is moving ahead on, it's safe to say that it will remain relevant to us. Furthermore, unlike other classical texts, the Thirukkural is applicable to all, regardless of age, race, language, and religion. And I believe that such a text is a necessity in the time that we're living in. Today, we're more divided than ever before by color, religion, language, nationality, sexuality, gender, caste, and what we really need right now is something that can unite us. Something that doesn't offer advice differentially, but considers all humans as equal. Something that gives each individual the same opportunity to learn and to become better versions of themselves. Something that can create better individuals, a better society, a better country, and a better world. And I strongly believe that the Thirukkural possesses the power to do this. I believe that it's a powerful tool, which if employed correctly, can make positive changes to our world. And right now, we have this tool in our hands. We have the ability to do something great. But in my eyes, we're failing to use it to its fullest potential, and we need to change that. We need to ensure that the Thirukkural reaches the eyes and ears of all those around the world. Hence, it's our desire to take the Thirukkural to UNESCO as an initial but significant step towards attaining a brighter future for ourselves and for the generations to come. But before taking such a great leap, a smaller step can be taken right here at home. There's a saying in Tamil that we often hear these days. Indraya Ilainargal, Naalaiya Thalaippargal. Today's children are tomorrow's leaders. If we aspire to create a more desirable, idyllic society, we must first start by educating the young. At around the primary school age, children remain innocent and almost oblivious to the world. But once they reach the critical stage of adolescence, they reach a fork in the road. At this time where they're undergoing rapid physiological and psychological changes, these young individuals become vulnerable to the influence of others, and their thoughts and values can become easily tainted. And we see the result of this more often than we like to in our communities. Many youth are constantly seen to be violating laws, destroying property, assaulting the weak and helpless, abusing substances, and engaging in violence. But I believe that by introducing the Thirukkural early on in life, it can act as an intervention to block this path of self-destruction.
By becoming familiar with the teachings of Thiruvalluvar at a young age, children may grow as respectful individuals who are filled with positive thoughts and behave in a moral manner. These children will then emerge into society as model citizens and will tomorrow be seated in Parliament thinking of ways to create an even brighter future for themselves and for our country. This is a harmonious Australia that I envision, and this can be the harmonious Australia that we create, that goes down in history if we take the right steps and initiative now. And I believe that a great start for this can take place right in our schools, with students being introduced to the Thiruvallur as a study of ethics. As of now, in recognition of Thiruvalluvar's great contribution to society through his text, Thiruvalluvar Day is celebrated on the 15th of January in the Indian state of Tamil. But I hope that soon, this day will be celebrated in Australia and go on to be recognised as an international day, with Thiruvalluvar's teachings reaching far and wide to make everlasting changes to our world. Nandri Vanakkam.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Apurva, Madhame, and Kavita, for your speeches about Mother Language Day, Thiruvalluvar Day, and Thamilar Day. We will now be moving on to our speeches in Tamil. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Dr. Karthik Veerasamy, who will be speaking about Thamilar Tirunal. Dr. Karthik is a physician, primarily practicing in the ACT. He is a proud founder and president of Australian Capital Literary Club in Canberra. He is a poet, Tamil orator, stage manager, and has contributed towards approximately 100 Tamil community literary events across India and Australia. He is a lover of the language, arts, heritage, history, culture, and literature.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, Bono. அன்னை தமிழுக்கு முதல் வணக்கம். உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் எனது அன்பான வணக்கத்தை முதலில் தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறேன். நண்பர்களே, முதலில் ஒரு சில வார்த்தைகளை ஆங்கிலத்தில் சொல்லிவிட்டு இந்த தமிழர் தினம் என்று எனக்கு அளிக்கப்பட்ட இந்த தலைப்பினை அணுகலாம் என்று நினைக்கின்றேன். It's been a very interesting day so far. That's all I can say from the start until now. What different views, what different opinions, what diversity. This is exactly what Australia was about to say. And that's where we find unity. Unity in diversity is Australia. It pretty much sums up the entire view of probably every individual here. I've heard from the first speech until the last one by Kavita, which is quite inspiring, to be honest. She finished on a high note. Thanks, Kavita. I was feeling ready for that speech after she gave us some confidence and some hopes and to look forward to a better future in Australia. நண்பர்களே, தமிழில் உரை என்பதால் தமிழுக்கு தாவி விடுகிறேன். உண்மையில் இங்கே வரும்போது எனக்கு அளித்த தலைப்பு தமிழர் தினம் என்பதால் நான் முக்கியமாக நம்முடைய தை மாதத்திலே கொண்டாடப்படுகின்ற தமிழர் தினமாகிய பொங்கல் திருநாளை பற்றி பேசவே நான் எண்ணி இருந்தேன். ஆனால் நண்பர்களே, தினம் என்பது கொண்டாடப்படுவதா? தினம், தமிழர் தினம் என்பது நம் பெருமையை நாம் பேசிக்கொள்வதா? இல்லை, நாம் நெல்லை அறுவடை செய்து கதிரவனுக்கும் இயற்கைக்கும் நன்றி செலுத்தும் அந்த நாளை மட்டுமே தமிழர் தினம் என்று வைத்துக் கொள்வதா? இல்லை நண்பர்களே, இல்லை. தமிழன் என்றைக்கு தன் கருத்துக்களை நிலத்தில் விதைத்தானோ, அந்த கருத்துக்களால் உயர்ந்த எண்ணங்களை அறுவடை செய்தானோ, அன்றைக்கே தமிழர் தினம் துவங்கிவிட்டது. இனிய நண்பர்களே, முதலாவதாக இந்த மேடையினை இங்கு பாராளுமன்ற அரங்கிலே அழகுற அமைத்து எங்களுக்கு தந்த தமிழ் வளர்ச்சி மன்றம், டாக்டர் சந்திரிகா சுப்பிரமணியன் அவர்களுக்கு எனது நன்றியை தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறேன். அத்தோடு கூட ஆஸ்திரேலிய பாராளுமன்ற உறுப்பினர்கள் மிஸ் ஜோடி மக்கே, டாக்டர் ஹியூ மெக்டர்மாட் ஆகிய இருவருக்கும் வணக்கத்தையும் நன்றியும் தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறேன். தமிழர் தினம் என்பது நாம் கொண்டாடுகின்ற பொங்கல் திருநாளில் மட்டும் இல்லை, அதிலும் இருக்கிறது என்றாலும் கூட உண்மையில் உணர்வால் தன்னுடைய எண்ணத்தால் தமிழன் என்றைக்கு முக்கியமான விடயங்களை செய்ய தொடங்கினானோ 2300 ஆண்டுகளுக்கு முன்னால் நம் உலகத்தில் ஒரு இலக்கியம் எழுதுவதென்றால் ஐரோப்பியர்கள் வேட்டையாடி கொண்டிருந்தார்கள். ஐரோப்பியர்கள் காட்டிலே வேட்டையாடி கொண்டிருந்தார்கள், உணவை தேடிக் கொண்டிருந்தார்கள். அந்த நிலையிலே நம் தமிழ் மக்கள் இலக்கியம் படைக்கும் அளவுக்கு கலாச்சாரத்திலே ஓங்கி இருந்தார்கள் என்றால் மிகவும் பெருமைத்தக்க விடயம். அன்றைக்கேதான் தமிழர் தினம் நிகழ்ந்திருக்கிறது. ஔவையார் சொல்லுகிறார், நம் அனைவருக்கும் முதிய அன்னையாகிய ஔவை பாட்டி சொல்லுகிறார், நண்பர்களே, காடா கொன்றோ நாடா கொன்றோ அவலா கொன்றோ விசையா கொன்றோ எவ்வழி நல்லவர் ஆடவர் அவ்வழி நல்லை வாழிய நிலனே என்று சொன்னாலே நம் பாட்டி. என்ன சொல்லுகின்றார்? ஒரு நாடு நன்றாக சீரமைக்கப்பட்ட நாடாகவும் இருக்கலாம், அன்றி அது காடாக கூட இருக்கலாம், ஒரு மேடாக இருக்கலாம் அல்லது பள்ளமாக இருக்கலாம். இதெல்லாம் முக்கியமில்லை நண்பர்களே. ஒரு நாட்டில் மக்கள் வாழ தகுதி வேண்டும் என்றால் அங்கு இருக்க வேண்டிய மக்கள் நல்லவர்களாக இருக்க வேண்டும். எவ்வழி நல்லவர் ஆளவர் என்று அதில் ஆண்களைத்தான் ஔவையார் சொன்னார் என்று அப்போ அந்த காலத்துல சொன்னார் என்று வைத்துக் கொண்டாலும் கூட இன்றைக்கு நாம் மக்கள் என்றுதான் அதை எடுத்துக்கொள்ள வேண்டும். ஏன்னா ஆண்கள்னு சொன்னா அது பெரிய பிரச்சனையா இருக்கு, ஜெண்டரிசம் இல்லையா? சோ ஔவையார் அன்று சொன்னது எவ்வழி நல்ல ஆடவர் அவ்வழி நல்லை வாழிய நிலை. அப்படிப்பட்ட ஒரு நிலமாகத்தான் நான் ஆஸ்திரேலியாவை பார்க்கின்றேன். ஆஸ்திரேலியாவில் நாம் வந்து இங்கு வாழ பல தடைகளை தாண்டி நாம் இங்கு வேரூன்ற உதவியாக இருக்கின்ற பெரும்பான்மை மக்கள், அவர்களைத்தான் நாம் எடுத்துக்கொள்ள வேண்டும். அத்தகைய ஒரு நிலமாகத்தான் ஆஸ்திரேலியாவை பார்க்கின்றேன். முன்னரே சொன்னதை போல தமிழர் தினம் என்ற பெருமை பேசுகின்ற நேரத்திலே நாம் கருத்துக்களைத்தான் முதலில் எடுத்துக்கொள்ள வேண்டும். நான் நினைத்திருந்தேன் இங்கு சில ஆங்கிலம் மட்டுமே பேசும் மக்கள் வந்திருப்பார்கள், அவர்களுக்காக ஒரு மொழிபெயர்ப்பாக ஆங்கில மொழிபெயர்ப்பை சொல்லிவிட்டு நம் தமிழர்களின் உயர்ந்த கருத்தான ஒரு உயரிய கருத்தான சங்க இலக்கிய பாடலை பற்றி இங்கு சொல்லலாம் என்று நினைத்திருந்தேன். அதை தொடர்ந்து முதலில் ஆங்கில மொழிபெயர்ப்பை உங்களுக்கு வழங்கிவிட்டு பாடலுக்குள் செல்வது பொருத்தமாக இருக்கும் என்று கருதுகின்றேன். நண்பர்களே, 2000 வருடங்களுக்கு முன்னால் எழுதிய ஒரு தமிழ் புலவன் எழுதிய பாடலின் ஆங்கில மொழிபெயர்ப்பு உங்களுக்காக. The whole world is our home. All the people of the world are our kith and kin. The good and bad do not happen to us just because of others. It is the same with sickness and wellness. Death is not new to us. Death is not new to us. We don't live life up beyond our means as if there is no tomorrow. Neither do we get too depressed by its difficulties. The rain of destiny thunders down the mountain of our world and creates the floods in the river of life. The rain of destiny thunders down the mountain of our world and creates the floods in the river of our lives. We, the mortal beings, are the actual boats that get floated and navigated by the river of our lives. We should remember that always. But we will find a way, our dear friends, we will find a way, he says. We will find a way to balance out the good and the bad, to balance out the evil and good fortune, to balance out the past, the present, and the future. It's still in our hands. Let us be modest. Let us be modest and strike a balance, friends, because our elders, our sages, our wise men have said this. Let's be modest and strike a balance, friends, because our elders, our sages, and our wise men have said this. Do not respect the rich just for their affluence, nor do we look down upon the simplest of people. We look for balance, my dear friends. We strive for equanimity. This is what was said by Kani and Pungundranar about 2000 years ago. The only comparable literature you find is even older. That's from the Egyptian wisdom by Ta Hotep. I hope I got the Egyptian pronunciation right. I have to hear it out a few times this morning. இதை தமிழிலே சொல்லுகின்றேன். கணியன் பூங்குன்றனார் என்னுடைய தமிழ் வார்த்தைகள். யாதும் ஊரே யாவரும் கேளிர், தீதும் நன்றும் பிறர் தர வாரா, நோதலும் தடிதலும் அவற்றோர் அன்ன, சாதலும் புதுவது அன்றே, வாழ்தல் இனிது என மகிழ்ந்தன்றும் இளமே, முனிவின் இன்னாதென்றலும் இளமே, மின்னொடு வானம் தன் துளி தலையி ஆனாது, கல் பொருது இறங்கும் மல்லல் பேர் யாற்று, நீர் வழிப்படுவோம் என்பது திறவோர் காட்சியின் தெளிந்தனம் ஆகலின், மாட்சியின் பெரியோரை வியத்தலும் இளமே, சிறியோரை இகழ்தல் அதனினும் இளமே என்று அற்புதமாக பாடி வைத்தார் நம் தமிழ் பாட்டன். இந்த முக்கியமான செய்தியையே நாம் தமிழர் முதலில் விழித்து உலகுக்கு கொடுத்த இந்த செய்தியையே உண்மையில் தமிழர் தங்களை தாங்களே கொண்டாடி கொள்ளும் திருநாளாக கருத வேண்டும் என்பது என்னுடைய மிக அழுத்தமான உறுதியான கருத்து. நண்பர்களே, இந்த சிற்றுரையை இதோடு முடிக்கின்ற நேரத்தில் ஒரு சிறிய விண்ணப்பம். நிகழ்ச்சிகள் தொடர்ந்து நடைபெற்றுக் கொண்டிருக்கின்ற இந்த மாலையில் நாம் அனைவரும் இவ்வளவு அமைதியாக உட்கார்ந்து பார்த்து கொண்டிருப்பதும் கவனித்துக் கொண்டிருப்பதும் மிகுந்த ஆனந்தத்தை அளிக்கின்றது. வாழ்க ஆஸ்திரேலியா, வாழிய செந்தமிழ், வாழ்க நற்றமிழர், வாழிய பாரத மணித்திருநாடு. வணக்கம்.
Thank you, Karthik, for such an inspiring speech to all of us here. But before we move on with our speeches, we just got told that we'll be taking a short 10-minute interval. There are tea served outside, so you can all go and get refreshed and come back to hear more wonderful speeches from our speakers.
Bana, screen stopping. Screen stopping. Battery here than we need to check actually.
Stop. Start.
Okay, so keep going. Okay, charge here and I'm worried about that. So, check.
இதுலேயும் கொண்டு தான் இருக்கு.